Become a member of this channel to watch early access videos and request novels by clicking on the Join button or by clicking on the membership link in the description.
That morning, he was overseeing the training of his subordinates. When we leave, it won't be a simple journey, Rigger began, locking eyes with everyone present. We carry the name of our tribe and the responsibility to represent it. Taze, you will lead the group that will establish our base outside the Great Forest. Lysina and Killian, you will stay here to lead the remaining group. Linnea and Persina, listen to them. Most of your time will be focused on training. You have potential, so make good use of it. He then gave several instructions to the other key members. Do you all understand? Yes, Chief, they answered in unison. Rigger placed a firm hand on Killian's shoulder. I trust your judgment, but remember this. Magic is a double-edged sword. Teach only those who demonstrate not just strength, but also wisdom. This knowledge in the wrong hands could be more dangerous than any blade. Killian nodded seriously. I understand. As Rigger walked back home after the meeting, he felt his beastly instincts stirring again. It was mating season, and he could barely ignore the glances from the women of the tribe, which under normal circumstances wouldn't bother him. This is a problem, he thought. It's getting out of control. What will become of me if I stay here until the next season? The real issue was that the women weren't helping. They had started commenting on the way he looked at them, and instead of being restrained, they seemed eager to seduce him. From the young ones, around 11 or 12 years old, to the older women, their behavior was both unsettling and distracting. Strength, it seemed, was a strong incentive here. This urgency only reinforced his desire to leave the village soon. If the worst happened, he hoped it would be with a more mature woman. Even though he had spent 8 years in this world, he still hadn't fully adjusted to the casual view of childhood sexuality. Some psychological barriers from his past life remained, and he didn't think they would disappear anytime soon. At the very least, he intended to respect this world's age of maturity, 15 years. Later that day, he was called to a meeting with Gustav and the other leaders. Upon entering, he felt the tension in the air. Guys and 2 other warriors who shared his views wore stern expressions. On the other side, Celine, Hantar, Verdia, and Geru appeared more confident but alert. Other elders were also gathered in the tent. Gustav stepped forward. Rigger, I know you've already made up your mind, but I hope you'll consider the matter of leaving the Great Forest carefully. There's disagreement about what's best for you and the tribe. Keep in mind that the final decision is still yours. Before Rigger could respond, Guys interjected. Rigger, you know how much your strength means to us. If you leave, we'll lose one of our strongest defenders. Last time, we barely managed to hold off a North Saint. If a king or emperor-ranked opponent were to appear, the losses would be devastating. It's a selfish request, but I'm asking you to stay for the tribe. My mother, Celine, raised her voice in response. This is absurd. How many warriors leave the tribe every year to explore the world and are never stopped? Why should Rigger be any different? Keeping someone like him here is condemning his potential. Gustav turned to Rigger. What do you have to say, boy? Rigger took a deep breath before answering. He was beginning to feel a slight irritation toward Guys. The man claimed to act for the good of the tribe, but his persistence was grating. Speaking clearly and without hesitation, Rigger said, I understand the risks of leaving the village, and I also understand everyone's concerns. But I am not abandoning the tribe. I am strengthening it. My departure isn't an end. It's a beginning. I want to carry the name of the Iron Legion beyond the Great Forest, and that begins with me. The silence that followed was heavy, but full of respect. Guy still seemed unconvinced, but he couldn't oppose Gustav's earlier statement that Rigger's decision would be his own. Finally, Gustav nodded. Then it's settled. Rigger, you'll have the tribe's support, but the responsibility will rest entirely on your shoulders. With the decision made, Rigger began preparing for his journey and his upcoming battle against the beast. If he couldn't reach Saint Level in this fight, his departure would be delayed. He wouldn't risk exploring the world while losing control of himself. Amidst his tasks, he found a moment to sit with Verdia, who was watching him silently. Master, Rigger began, do you think I'm ready for this? Verdia, with a subtle smile, replied, Ready or not, Rigor, you're doing something few have the courage to attempt. Strength isn't just in your abilities, but in your determination to move forward. Rigor nodded, feeling the weight of her words. I could come with you if you want. I had planned to stay a few more years, but I wouldn't mind leaving a little earlier, she offered. Rigor hesitated before responding. There's no need, Master. I have some things to do on this journey, and I don't want to interrupt your break. He lied. In truth, he thought it would be too dangerous to bring her along, considering what he intended to do. He would have loved her company otherwise. She seemed about to say something, but stopped midway, her expression a mix of concern and affection. All right, little Rigor, but be careful. He only nodded, and the two, master and disciple, sat quietly, watching the rain fall as night descended. Current status. Age, 8 years and 2 months. Mana reserves. Emperor level. Magical skills. Fire magic, advanced. Earth magic, saint. Water magic, advanced. Wind magic, king. Healing magic, advanced. Detoxification magic, advanced. Barrier magic, intermediate. Howling magic, mastered. Combat skills. North God style, advanced. Sword God style, advanced. Water God style, elementa. Combat with natural weapons, claws, instincts, etc. advanced. Battle strength. High saint level warrior. Intellectual skills. Reading and writing in beast god and human languages. Language of the demon god. Knows a lot of vocabulary, but incommunicable. Mathematics, university level. Practical skills. Excellent hunter, good teacher, very bad cook. It's almost inedible, but it can be eaten to avoid starving to death. Excellent builder, earth magic, good swimmer. Chapter 19, The Blue of the Night and the Blades Shine. The rain, which had poured over the great forest for months, was finally taking its last breaths. The gray clouds still lingered above the treetops, but the air was lighter, the raindrops falling sporadically, and the fresh scent of the earth mixed with the soft aroma of the leaves. Rigor was perched on one of the massive trees, his eyes closed and his mind calm. He focused on the sounds around him, letting the forest speak to him. He could hear the small animals moving through the leaves, the cautious steps of a deer in the distance, the soft sound of a squirrel digging the ground, and even the distant flight of a bird. But what caught his attention the most was the sound of the wind, carrying with it the sense of plants and wildlife, whispering secrets that only he could perceive with his sharp senses. As his ears filtered the environment, he could smell a nearby stream, the damp touch of a tree, and the fragrance of flowers that were just beginning to bloom. The end of the rainy season always brings a sense of renewal, how the forest breathes and prepares for the next season. It's curious how everything in the world seems to follow a cycle. I will miss this. Lost in thought, Rigor reflected on the life he had lived so far. The relentless training, his journey with the Doldia tribe, and the bonds he had forged with friends and mentors along the way. Although only 8 years old in this world, he already carried the experience of 28 years, shaped by the memories of his 2 lives. In such a short time, Rigor had already begun to distance himself from the person he once was in his previous world. He was maturing rapidly, not only physically, but also in spirit, gradually adapting to the harsh realities of his new existence. Despite his young age, his appearance told a different story. His still-developing frame already resembled that of a 10 or 11-year-old, marked by firm muscles, a piercing gaze, and the posture of a seasoned warrior, someone who had faced battles far beyond his years. Opening his eyes, Rigor activated his magical vision. His eyes gleamed with an unusual intensity, and for a moment, the world around him expanded. The forest stretched before him like a detailed painting, the mana surrounding all the vegetation, and he could see hundreds of meters with astonishing clarity. The trees, the animals, even the small details of fallen leaves on the ground, all became visible, as if reality itself was unfolding before his senses. He felt a surge of energy, as though he were at the peak of his growth spurt. With a swift motion, he activated Flash Step, and his body was enveloped in an explosion of energy, instantly vanishing from the top of the tree and darting toward the tribe. He could feel the strength in his muscles, his incredible speed, and the wind slicing across his face as he covered the kilometers in the blink of an eye. Rigger landed nimbly in the center of the village, his feet making a faint sound as they touched the ground. Around him, the atmosphere was completely different from usual. The smell of food in the air, the laughter, and the shouts of excitement gave the impression that the entire tribe was in a joyous frenzy. The rainy season, which had made their lives so difficult, had finally ended, and everyone was ready to celebrate the almost non-existent casualties that season. No great battles, no disasters. A reason to celebrate. This was mainly due to Rigger testing his techniques, but also thanks to the focused training done in the Iron Legion, in addition to the 7 young warriors who could use magic without incantations, making things much more convenient in battles. He watched the frantic movement of people around him. Some warriors were preparing the meat for the feast, using large knives to cut pieces. Others were setting up tents and tables, and a few more distracted ones were sparring in friendly duels, using wooden swords. It was a spectacle of simple fun, but full of energy. Rigger! Verdia appeared from afar, her face with a smile that he could swear was a magical effect that made her glow. Her golden hair was loose and swaying hypnotically. She wore a simple dress, different from her occasional mage cloak, making her look like an angel among mortals. When she saw him, she gestured for him to come closer. Rigger stood in awe for a moment before walking toward her. "You're getting tall, little Rigger," she said, her voice full of pride. "Soon I won't be able to call you little anymore." Rigger laughed, looking at his master. He felt immense affection for her, a mix of deep respect and a bond that transcended just the master-student relationship. He knew that she had been instrumental in his development, both in magic and in mindset. Amid his confusion on how to handle the new truths of his society, she had been his guide, teaching him so much about life with her experiences and patiently listening to all his doubts. Soon, Celine approached with a warm smile. "That warrior's body is already taking shape, isn't it?" she commented, looking at Rigger with a playful gaze. What Rigger liked most about his mother was her laid-back nature, which, despite her difficult past, had allowed her to adjust to life in the tribe. Celine and Rigger shared a strong bond, as his mother had always treated him with unconditional love, regardless of his mistakes or difficulties. Soon, they reached a campfire where Rigger's father, Hantar, was sitting. He was imposing, with powerful muscles and a posture that commanded respect. Despite the harsh way he treated others, Rigger thought of him as a classic tsundere. "Hey, Dad, do you need help cooking the meat?" Rigger offered, wanted to be useful, but the air changed instantly when he heard 3 consecutive refusals. "No need," Hunter said seriously. "How about we go play darts instead, son?" his mother said, steering the conversation away. "Yeah, we can talk while doing that, little Rigger," his master added. The emotional blow was significant. Was my skill really that bad? Rigger forced a smile and agreed. "Sure, let's play darts." Meanwhile, Fendrell and Geru, his fencing instructors, were among the fighters dueling with wooden swords. Fendrell, always serious, was facing Geru, who had a more relaxed attitude, but was equally skilled after Fendrell lost his arm. They exchanged quick, precise strikes, their swords clashing with force, but leaving no marks. Rigger observed intently, absorbing every movement, every tactic used by the two. Around them, other warriors were engaged in equally lively activities. A group of younger warriors was involved in a fist fight, laughing as they exchanged punches carelessly but with the contagious energy of youth. Nearby, some older members were playing a knife-throwing game, their expressions more serene, yet just as absorbed in the competition. The sound of laughter and celebration filled the air. The mating season was in full swing. The sacred beast was also there, in a small sanctuary, visibly excited when it saw Rigger. Its white fur shone, and it watched him with glowing eyes, as if eager for Rigger's next move. Whenever he approached, it let out a small bark of approval. Amid the celebration, some of the Iron Legion warriors started to chat eagerly about what was coming next. "The chief is going to challenge an A-rank beast without magic, right?" One of the warriors commented quietly, but loud enough for Rigger to hear. I heard it's in 3 days. The news spread quickly, and the conversations grew more animated. What madness! We'll need a group of the best warriors to kill one safely. In a corner, Gustav, the tribe's leader, climbed onto a small makeshift platform and raised a cup. All eyes turned to him. Today is a day of celebration, he said in his strong, commanding voice. We've overcome another rainy season, another tough time, and, more importantly, we came out of it stronger than ever. The Doldia tribe remains united, and for that, we must toast to our strength, our courage, and the future that awaits us. The crowd applauded, clapping and shouting in approval. The atmosphere became even more vibrant, with everyone sharing the sense of unity. Rigger, observing his tribe members, felt a strong connection to them, something he hadn't felt in his previous life, a sense of belonging. Even knowing that he would leave soon, the feeling of being part of this tribe, this family, was something he would never forget. As the feast continued, Rigger stepped aside to a quiet corner, chatting with friends and simply enjoying his rare moment of rest, soaking in the warmth of the night and the feeling of camaraderie. The party raged on as the festive mood took over everyone. He walked a little and saw Killian, who was showing some of the tribe's children how to throw stones. His movements were quick and precise. The wind magic he used to control the stone's direction seemed magical to the children. Your control is great, Killian, Rigger commented with a smile. Killian smiled back, his eyes shining with confidence. I've been training a lot, Chief. Keep training then. Being young, you need to at least be strong enough to lead the Iron Legion. Rigger observed the young man, one of the most promising of his generation, with the ability to use advanced wind and earth magic. Killian was still a child, but his determination was unwavering. Rigger had also seen that he had potential for the water god style, so he told him to train more seriously in that style. He had already decided that, one day, Killian would take on a leadership role in the Iron Legion. Further along, Taze was helping Lysena assemble a set of improvised weapons for a small combat tournament. They were having fun, but Rigger could see the intensity in their gazes. Taze, with his earth magic skills, and Lysena, with her talent for barriers, were getting closer to an advanced level. It was remarkable how they communicated with just their eyes, their abilities complementing each other perfectly. Taze, Lysena, don't forget to rest as well, Rigger called. But they were so focused on preparing for the fight that they hardly noticed his presence. Linnea was further ahead, engaged in a friendly match with other warriors from the tribe, testing her strength and agility. She still seemed so small, but already demonstrated the skills of a fighter. Her fire magic made her opponents hesitate, and her quick, precise attacks were impressive. Hey, don't be so aggressive, Linnea, Rigger warned. It was you, Chief, who told me that in the sword god style, aggression is always the answer, she said proudly, with her arms crossed, as if she had discovered the truth about life. Amid the entire celebration, he found Persina, who was sitting in a corner, observing the party, with a large plate of meat hidden behind herself. The girl was absorbed by the atmosphere around her. She was quiet, but always attentive, although it seemed as if she was protecting her meat. She even glared aggressively at him when he passed by. Rigger then went to look for his master. She was talking to another woman from the tribe. As he approached, he noticed how the firelight from the campfire reflected in her hair, creating an almost magical aura around her. She was more radiant than ever. The beauty of Verdia seemed to increase as time passed, not just because of her appearance, but because of the confidence and kindness she radiated. So, Rigger, she asked, her eyes observing him with curiosity. Are you having fun? Yeah, but I might be a little nervous about facing the beast in 3 days. I've already defeated one with magic, but with just the sword I'll be very limited. You'll make it, and even if you don't, you can try again and again. You'll always have us to support you, Verdia said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Rigger felt a comforting warmth in his chest when he heard her words. She always knew how to give the right kind of support at the right moment. He smiled back at her, feeling more determined to continue his journey. I know, Master. One day, I'll surpass all these limits. Verdia smiled, a sparkle in her eyes. "I know that. Just don't forget to enjoy the celebration while you can, Rigger." Rigger nodded, and for a moment got lost in her eyes. He tried to imagine what his new life would be without her, and once again realized how important she had been. The music and dancing continued around them, but Rigger was calmer now. He knew what he needed to do. The party was coming to an end, and the night slowly descended upon the tribe. The last laughs and conversations began to fade, and the flames from the campfires began to die down, leaving only a soft glow illuminating the tired faces of the warriors and villagers. When everyone had gone to sleep, Rigger got up. He knew this would be his only chance to face the A-rank beast without anyone interfering, as they were all tired. So he lied, saying he would face it in 3 days, so he could truly challenge himself. He was sure there would be warriors lurking to save him if something went wrong. So what would be the point of facing it without magic? When the last group of warriors retreated to their homes, he silently sneaked back to the exit of his house, aware that most of the tribe was already sleeping. As he opened the door, Rigger was surprised by a sight that made him stop for a moment. On the branch just ahead of the door, carefully hanging, was a sword. It was adorned with intricate details and a blade that emanated a unique aura. He approached cautiously, not recognizing the sword. It was a piece he hadn't seen before. It had a unique appearance, unlike anything he had used before. The scabbard was black, with golden and blue details. He carefully took the sword by the hilt, the weight of the blade perfectly balanced in his hand. With a sense of reverence, Rigger unsheathed the sword, examining it more closely. The blue blade extended before him with impressive lightness, almost ethereal, with a soft glow that seemed to change in intensity as the night light touched it. At the beginning of the blade, the name was engraved, Tsukikage Moonshadow. There was something about it that unsettled him, as if it was more than just a simple weapon. This is definitely not an ordinary sword, Rigger thought, feeling a shiver run down his spine. The weight of the sword and its exotic appearance made it clear that it was not just any weapon, but something forged with great care, perhaps even magic involved. He raised the sword before him, and for a moment, he felt as though the blade was asking to be used. It was an indescribable feeling, as if the sword was aligned with him, ready to unleash all its power. He then looked at the small note hanging with the sword. He then laughed. She knew, of course, she knew. The note left with the sword had the simple message, "Good luck, little Rigger." This phrase at that moment touched his heart deeply. With every word he remembered, he felt a weight of responsibility, but also a quiet pride. Verdia believed in him, trusted him, and this sword represented much more than just a weapon to kill for him. With one last glance at the room and the tribe sleeping in the distance, Rigger turned and left the house, determined. He could wait no longer. His journey was about to begin. The A-rank beast awaited him, and he had to be ready. He crossed the forest, the sword in his hand, emitting a soft glow as he advanced, as if every step was bringing him closer to his destiny. Chapter 20: The Flavor of the Hunt. The sound of the leaves whispered in the wind as Rigger advanced through the dense forest, his feet pressing firmly into the damp soil, the strong scent of earth filling his nostrils. Sunlight barely pierced through the canopies of the towering trees, creating shadows that danced around him. He carried 2 swords. At his waist hung Tsukikage, the sword entrusted to him by Verdia. On his back was his regular sword, the one he had initially planned to use. He breathed deeply, preparing for the challenge he had set for himself. He had already exhausted all his mana constructing extremely dense earthen structures before entering that territory. It was a dangerous gamble, but a necessary one. He had been training to reach the Saint level for 2 years now. Fendrel had told him that with his talent and the speed at which he reached the advanced level, he should already be there. However, the lack of strong opponents and real pressure had caused him to stagnate. As he approached the area where he knew the silver mist wolf reigned, his instincts began to scream. The sensation was like an electric shock through his nerves, a shiver climbing his spine. He was out of mana, approaching a dangerous enemy. His body was warning him, but he shook his head, pushing the fear aside. The whole point was for it to be dangerous, after all. He kept moving forward, senses sharp, ignoring the growing discomfort. The air felt denser here, almost oppressive. The sounds of the forest had diminished, as if even the insects feared disturbing this place. Suddenly, the surroundings opened into a clearing. The ground was littered with battle marks, and pieces of flesh scattered across the area exuded a metallic scent of blood. His eyes fell on the remains of the ruler of that territory, the original silver mist wolf. Its massive body, over 7 meters long, lay destroyed. The powerful claws and silver fur, which should have symbolized its strength, now lay motionless, covered in deep wounds and bite marks. The figure responsible for the massacre was feasting on the fallen opponent's flesh. The new wolf was half the size of the original mist wolf, but equally impressive. The creature was unlike anything Rigger had expected. Its blue-green fur shimmered with a supernatural hue under the forest's diffuse light, moving as if alive, and its eyes gleamed with terrifying intelligence. A mutation, Rigger thought, recalling Verdia's lessons. Mutated monsters were rare, but incredibly dangerous. Before he could react, his instincts screamed again, more intensely than ever. Run! It was a primal command straight to his core. For a moment he hesitated, but then the wolf turned its head, fixing him with eyes that seemed to pierce his soul. He saw the creature's muscles tense, and in the next instant, it charged with a speed he could barely follow. Rigger leapt back, trying to evade the attack, but wasn't quick enough. The creature's claws grazed his throat, leaving a deep cut. Pain exploded in his mind as blood began to flow. Without time to process, he activated Flash Step, though a version using only 2 ki, which made it less effective. The movement was instinctive but poorly executed, and he stumbled upon landing, feeling the impact in his knees. Damn it! With the wolf on his heels, he broke into a frantic run, dropping to all fours to gain more speed, a classic technique of the Doldia tribe. His arms and legs worked in perfect sync, propelling him across the uneven terrain. Branches scratched his skin, but he had no time to think about it. With each step, he felt the wolf drawing closer, its figure just a blur moving through the forest. The attacks came relentlessly. The wolf leaped between the trees with deadly precision, cutting off Rigger's path like a predator toying with its prey. He barely dodged the strikes, the beast's golden eyes glowing in the mist that began to shroud the area. Rigger knew he was being tested. "If I could use magic, you'd already be cut into 100 pieces," he growled, frustrated. This monster was fast, so fast he couldn't hope to react to its attacks. His magic eye, active from the start, helped him track the creature's movements, but even then he couldn't land a hit. The wolf was too fast, and its shimmering blue fur created illusory images as it moved, further complicating the fight. The chase went on for what felt like hours, wounds and cuts accumulating across his body. Rigger was running out of breath, the blood from his throat leaving a crimson trail in his wake. The clarity of his thoughts was beginning to fade. He knew he couldn't escape. The wolf was toying with him. It could have caught him at any moment. I need to fight. Now! Rigger's mind worked quickly as he ran. He needed a plan. He couldn't win by running, and a direct attack was suicide. He would have to outsmart the monster. Cutting a detour in his path, he slightly slowed his pace, feigning weakness. His legs trembled, and he allowed the wolf to see it. It was a risk. If he failed, it would be over. The monster growled, its eyes gleaming with sadistic delight. It charged again, claws ready for the final blow. A pure arrow of force and speed, aimed directly at Rigger. He felt the hairs on his neck stand on end, his body entirely on alert. Seconds stretched into eternity as he prepared his response. At the last moment, Rigger sidestepped, nearly crawling on the ground to evade the creature's claws. He drew the blue sword, attempting the fastest longsword of silence he could muster, but the strike hit nothing but air. The creature was too fast. As Rigger glanced back, he saw the wolf already repositioned just a few meters away, its predatory stance unchanged. But it wasn't just speed. The illusions created by the monster's shimmering fur made tracking its real position almost impossible. Every step left visual echoes, after images that confounded his senses. Rigger tightened his grip on his sword and adjusted his breathing. His eyes narrowed as he focused his magic eye again, studying the wolf's movement patterns. Even with the ability, tracking it was like trying to catch a bolt of lightning amidst a storm. The wolf lunged again, but this time, he was ready. Rigger rolled forward, dodging the sharp claws that slashed through the air just above his head. Rising fluidly, he swung Tsukikage in a downward arc. The blade glowed with the force of his Tuki, but once again, it struck nothing but empty space. The monster leaped back, its growl morphing into a low, guttural sound that vibrated through the air. It circled him, its glowing eyes filled with calculated malice. It seemed to savor the fight Rigger was putting up, a predator playing with its prey. Rigger gritted his teeth. He was losing blood fast, and his strength was waning. Each movement felt heavier, slower. "It's wearing me down." The clearing around him seemed to close in, as if the environment itself was conspiring against him. The ground was slick with damp leaves and streaks of his own blood. The surrounding trees formed a natural barrier, limiting his escape options. "I need an opening. Anything." He kept his eyes locked on the wolf, tracking its movements carefully. The creature began to pick up speed, running in tighter and tighter circles around him. The sound of its paws against the ground created a sinister rhythm, a prelude to his impending death. Then the wolf attacked again, leaping toward him with claws extended. Rigger swung the long sword of silence again, but the monster evaded at the last moment, twisting its body in an almost impossible motion. "It's intelligent." The strike grazed the wolf's flank, leaving a shallow wound. But before Rigger could capitalize, searing pain erupted in his right leg. The monster's jaws clamped down on his thigh, the sound of teeth tearing through flesh and muscle echoing across the clearing. He let out a primal scream, the pain cutting through the forest silence. Reacting quickly, he brought his sword down in a desperate slash, but the wolf released his leg and jumped back before the blade could connect. Rigger collapsed to his knees, blood pouring from his wounded leg. His breathing was labored, and the world spun around him. The pain was unbearable, but he knew he couldn't stop. "If I fall now, I'm dead." The wolf began circling him again, like a hunter waiting for the perfect moment to strike. His blood dripped steadily onto the ground, and the clearing seemed to spin. With immense effort, Rigger forced himself to his feet, using his sword for support. He steadied his stance, ignoring the throbbing pain that consumed his body. His hands trembled, but his eyes remained locked on the creature. "I'm still alive. As long as I'm alive, I can fight." The wolf suddenly halted, crouching low. Rigger recognized the stance. It was preparing for a high-speed charge. This was it, now or never. As the monster lunged, Rigger did something unexpected. He threw himself to the side, feigning a fall and leaving himself completely exposed. The creature surged forward, believing its prey was defenseless. At the last moment, Rigger focused all his remaining strength into a single movement. With a roar of effort, he swung his sword in a swift, precise arc aimed at the wolf's neck. The blade connected, but only superficially. The wolf instinctively twisted away, and Rigger felt the slight resistance of his cut. Before he could follow through, a sudden, devastating force struck his chest. The wolf had used its hind legs to kick him mid-turn, the impact like a speeding truck. He felt his ribs crack and the air rush out of his lungs as he was hurled dozens of meters away, rolling violently along the ground. He groaned, but didn't let go of his sword. Regaining his spatial awareness, he forced himself to stand again. Rigger was on the ground, bleeding and exhausted, as the wolf circled him like a living shadow. Each movement sent a fresh wave of pain through his body. He knew he was on the verge of passing out. "I can't last much longer." Yet he continued to breathe, forcing himself to focus. He would need something beyond strength or skill. He would need a miracle. The sound of Rigger's ragged breathing was drowned out by the wolf's low, constant growl. The forest seemed to hold its breath, as though awaiting the inevitable conclusion. Every muscle in Rigger's body screamed for rest, but he knew that giving in meant death. The wolf, now with blood staining its maw, watched him with predatory patience. It circled the young warrior like a shadow, waiting for the right moment to strike. Every movement seemed calculated, as if it already knew the fight was over. Rigor staggered as he rose, his injured leg barely responding. Using his blue sword as a crutch, he straightened and faced the wolf. "I won't fall here. I can't fall here." The creature attacked again, but this time, Rigor evaded purely on instinct, rolling aside and breaking into a desperate sprint. He had no plan, just the overwhelming urge to survive. His breathing was ragged, and every step was agony, but he pushed on, moving like a beast clinging to life. The trees blurred past him as he ran, leaping from trunk to trunk, ignoring the pain and driven only by instinct. But the wolf was relentless. Its pursuit was merciless, its paw steps pounding through the forest like a drumbeat of death. Rigor knew he was at his limit. His body should have given out long ago, yet he remained standing, fueled by sheer determination. During a leap between two trunks, his leg finally gave out. He felt the tendon snap, and his balance faltered. The world seemed to slow as he fell, the wind howling in his ears. Acting on instinct, he hurled the common sword from his back toward the wolf. The strike carried the precision of a North god technique, but the creature easily dodged, twisting its body in midair without losing momentum. Rigor crashed into another tree, the impact reverberating through his battered body. But the sword he had thrown bought him a single second. Turning his head slowly, he saw the beast leaping toward him, claws and fangs poised for the final strike. Ignoring his shredded leg and countless wounds, he launched himself at the creature, using the tree as leverage. This is it. In that last moment, something within him clicked. A spark of clarity flashed through his mind as he gripped Tsukikage with both hands. He had no strength left, but his mind, honed by years of combat, guided him instinctively. "At least I'll take you down with me, you bastard." With an almost automatic motion, Rigor raised the sword and executed the most familiar technique from his training, the long sword of silence. But this blow felt different, faster, sharper. The blade gleamed briefly, a golden streak that sliced through the air in a horizontal arc, aiming for the wolf's neck. The creature dodged, but the speed and precision of the strike surpassed anything Rigor had ever achieved. The blade struck the wolf at the top of its skull, slicing through flesh and bone before stopping. The monster's body kept moving, crashing into Rigor and slamming them both into the trunk of a nearby tree, the sound echoing through the forest. The wolf's lifeless body collapsed on top of him, motionless. Silence enveloped the clearing. Rigor, still leaning against the tree, crawled out from under the wolf's corpse. The creature was undoubtedly dead, its breathing fading until it ceased entirely. He let out a long sigh, feeling the weight of the moment sink in. "I did it." His thoughts grew hazy, and he realized he was teetering on the edge of unconsciousness. Blood continued to flow from his wounds, his vision growing blurry. As his awareness faded, he focused on the sound of his own heartbeat, still pounding, and the cold air filling his lungs. For all his injuries, for all the pain, he was still alive. And then, for the first time in years, Rigor succumbed to physical exhaustion and fainted. Chapter 21, Sword Saint. Rigor slowly opened his eyes, feeling a gentle pulse coursing through his body, as though he were being wrapped in a comforting warmth. His vision was blurry, but his ears caught a familiar, kind, and warm voice. "And let him recover with a healthy body." Exhale. The magic radiated over him, gradually restoring his strength. As his mind cleared, he saw Verdia crouching beside him, her gaze fixed on him with evident concern. When she noticed that Rigor was regaining consciousness, her expression softened, though worry still lingered in her eyes. "Are you all right?" Verdia's voice was soft, but it carried a subtle note of concern that Rigor rarely heard from her. She watched him intently, probably waiting for any sign that the healing had fully taken effect. Rigor forced himself to sit up, feeling his energy returning. He used a healing spell on himself and gave a faint smile as he felt his strength spreading through his body. "Yes, I'm feeling better now. Thank you, Master. Verdia stood up, relief crossing her face. That's good. I came looking for you after you were gone all night. I was so worried. You still need some time to recover, but the worst is over. There were some complications, Rigger admitted. That wolf over there was a mutation. It had already killed the Silver Mist wolf when I arrived. I had to fight for my life. He paused, reflecting on his near-death experience. But maybe I should thank it after all. He grabbed the blue blade and focused on the Tuki flowing through his body. A moment later, he smiled. Moving forward, he accelerated rapidly, far faster than he ever had with his previous flash step technique. He shot past a tree like a bullet, leaving only a deep slash at its base. The trunk toppled over with a resounding crash in the silent forest. This was the true signature move of the sword god style, the long sword of light. Verdia observed him for a moment before clapping excitedly. A joyful smile spread across her lips as she congratulated him, her pride for him shining even brighter than his own. Congratulations, little Rigger. You're now a sword saint, she declared, stepping closer. I hope the sword has been useful. Rigger's eyes focused on the blade. Its elegant blue design was both sleek and aggressive, emanating an almost predatory aura. I bought it from an elf who had kept it in his collection for years. It's one of the 49 blades crafted by Julian Jalisco, the Demon Realm artisan, using the bones of the Dragon King Kajikut. It's yours now. Rigger's eyes widened, feeling the weight of the gift. I was torn between giving you a staff or a sword. Verdia continued with a faint smile, but I chose the sword because you can embed a magic stone in it. That way, it can act as your casting focus. However, to do that, you'll need to visit the Dwarven territory. Only they can modify such a blade without compromising its properties. Rigger blinked in surprise. Properties? What kind of effect does it have? Verdia smiled, a playful glint in her eyes. Tsukikage becomes sharper and more durable the hotter its surroundings get. For a moment, Rigger was speechless. His mind raced with possibilities, imagining the potential of such a weapon. That means... He trailed off, gazing at the blade in awe. I can use my fire magic with it almost without limits, can't I? Verdia nodded. I haven't confirmed it with your level of magic, but when I tested it with an advanced spell, it seemed to handle it perfectly. Rigger's heart raced as he gripped the Tsukikage tightly, feeling the energy it exuded. The blade seemed attuned to something within him. Thank you, Master, he said, genuine gratitude evident in his voice. She had spoken casually about it, but finding a sword that perfectly matched his combat style surely hadn't been simple. Let's return to the village. You need to truly rest now. Rigger agreed, and the two began walking back toward the village. Along the way, they continued their conversation. Rigger couldn't help but ask about the future of the Iron Legion, and more importantly, the sharing of magical knowledge he was developing. Master, what do you think about making knowledge of chantless magic and the idea that mana can grow during childhood public? Rigger asked, studying Verdia closely. He already knew this was a delicate subject, but her answer felt crucial to his plans. Verdia pondered for a moment, her eyes focused on the path ahead. I agree that this knowledge should be shared, but it must be done gradually. We can't just throw it out into the world unprepared. There are too many implications. It's not something to be rushed. Rigger nodded, understanding her caution. Do you think it could be taught more widely someday? Yes, eventually. But for that, you'll need to be stronger first. If you intend to spread these methods, many will come after you. Your strength, both magical and physical, must be unquestionable. And I'm telling you this because I know you have that potential. Verdia looked at him with a soft smile, as if appraising him. When you decide to focus on your magical research and developing your potential, Renoa would be a good place. There, you can delve even deeper into your studies. I'll stop by at some point to visit a disciple. I've already decided I'll go there at some point, Rigger replied, but first I need to ensure the Iron Legion is ready for the future. Their conversation shifted to other topics. Verdia spoke of her own future, revealing that she would leave the Great Forest in a few years. I'll be leaving the Great Forest soon too, young Rigger. Perhaps in 5 years or so. I've been here a long time, and my journey will eventually take me elsewhere. Perhaps we'll meet outside the forest if fate allows. Rigger already knew Verdia was a free spirit, but hearing it aloud made him feel that their time together was drawing to a close. The sense of impending loss was inevitable. The great forest wasn't his ultimate home, just as the tribe wouldn't be his permanent origin. Rigger nodded, and Verdia continued sharing stories and offering him advice about the world beyond the great forest. When they arrived at the village, the scene before them was familiar and welcoming. Warriors and villagers moved about, greeting Rigger with respect. He waved back with a smile, though his mind was elsewhere, contemplating what was to come. Soon, they reached his home. Training outside were Hantar, Geru, and Fendrel. Before he could say anything, Rigger was caught off guard by his mother, who ran to him, her face filled with concern. "Rigger!" She wrapped him in a tight hug, almost knocking the air out of him. "Are you all right? You left without saying anything. You drove me crazy." Her voice shifted between relief and scolding. Rigger, still being crushed, responded with a tired smile. "I'm fine, Mom. And I did it." She let him go, frowning in confusion. "Did what?" He raised Sukikage and said proudly, "I am now a sword saint." Fendrel was the first to react, letting out a hearty laugh. "Huh, I knew you had it in you, kid." He walked over to Rigger and gave him a strong pat on the shoulder, nearly knocking him off balance. Hantar and Geru nodded enthusiastically, Rigger's father looking at him with a conflicted expression. "A sword saint at such a young age?" Geru murmured, clearly impressed. "You're going to make history, kid. You're already far beyond the rest of us." Hantar smiled, his voice filled with fatherly pride, mixed with a touch of unease. "Our tribe has never had a warrior of saint rank so young." While Rigger's mother announced she would prepare a special dinner to celebrate, Fendrel stepped forward. "Well done, Rigger. With this, my goal here is complete." His voice was clear and direct, but there was a trace of satisfaction in it. "I'll leave the great forest and return to my kingdom. Irina and I have our own paths to follow." The announcement caught many by surprise, but Fendrel raised a hand to silence any objections. "This has already been decided. The time I've spent here will stay with me forever, but I also have Irina, and I want to have children of my own." And Rigger, he stepped closer, placing a hand on the young man's shoulder. "I know the whole world will hear your name one day. I truly recommend that you visit the Sword Sanctuary to refine your skills further." To my knowledge, the current sword god became a sword saint at 15. You've already surpassed him in that regard, and I'm sure your potential can take you even further than he has gone. Rigger nodded, absorbing the farewell words. Even though Fendrel wasn't his master, he had still been a teacher, imparting almost everything Rigger knew about the sword god style. Meanwhile, his mother crossed her arms, looking at him with a half-maternal, half-playful smile. "Sword saint or not, you're still my little boy." She pinched his cheeks, eliciting laughter from those around, while Rigger contemplated how to salvage his dignity. Verdia, who had been silently observing until then, finally spoke. "This is just the beginning." Her voice was gentle, but carried a note of pride. "Honestly, I've never seen anyone with as much talent as Rigger. I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes a legendary figure like the Armored Dragon King or Kalmanai." They then headed inside to celebrate the occasion. Verdia also informed him that his final graduation would take place in 5 months. As days passed, Rigger began training in new techniques he had devised after learning to consciously control his Tuki. While observing the tribe, he realized that as they grew in scale, they would need a better hierarchical system for organization. Thus, he began working on it. One day, while walking to the training field where the members of the Iron Legion were exercising, a sense of pride welled up within him as he watched how the tribe and its allies were evolving. The terrain, shaped with earth magic to be more resilient, was perfect for training. The magically reinforced soil not only created a robust field, but also increased durability, allowing warriors to train without worrying about damaging the environment. He paused for a moment, watching the warriors' movements. Some were engaged in hand-to-hand combat, practicing the tribe's unarmed style. Others were using magic or training with swords and other weapons, showcasing skills inspired by the North God, Sword God, and Water God styles. The Iron Legion had grown impressively since its foundation, uniting members of the tribe and others from surrounding tribes under a common purpose: defending the Great Forest. Some were seasoned fighters, while others were just beginning, but all seemed committed to becoming stronger. Killian spotted him and approached, noticing Rigger's contemplative stance. "Chief, do you have something in mind? Anything else for the training?" Rigger turned to him. "Yes, Killian. We need to be more versatile. The Iron Legion currently has 4 combat methods available: the tribe's unarmed style, North God, Sword God, and Water God styles." He paused, watching the warriors practicing these styles. "I want you to guide the warriors in testing their aptitude in each of these styles, even the more experienced ones. Some may naturally excel in one over the others, but this will help us better utilize everyone's potential." Killian nodded, understanding the logic behind the proposal. "I see. Should I do the same with magic?" "Exactly," Rigger confirmed with a nod. "It's important for them to become more adaptable. We can't rely on a single style in combat. Our ultimate goal goes far beyond that. Each warrior needs to be capable of reacting in different ways." He approached one of the warriors training with a sword, observing their movements. "I've also gathered information about the surrounding tribes. Many of the warriors here, whether official members or not, are already part of the Iron Legion. We need to expand it, Killian. Extend the Legion to the neighboring tribes. To do this, I prepared a hierarchy system to be implemented once the number of members exceeds a certain limit." Rigger pulled a notebook from his clothes and handed it to Killian. The notebook was filled with detailed records of various styles, spells, and tactics he knew. It also contained information about the neighboring tribes, with suggestions on integrating new members and establishing a more efficient command system. This notebook contains everything you need to implement this hierarchy. It will help make our Legion more structured and ready for the future. Killian flipped through the pages attentively. "All right, I'll start working on this immediately. As second in command, you need to be strong, Killian. Don't try to do everything alone. Delegate tasks. You're already an excellent magician, but you still need physical training, especially in the Water God style," Rigger added, tilting his head slightly. He knew Killian had impressive magical abilities, but also understood that physical training was crucial in this world. A pure mage was as fragile as paper against saint-ranked warriors. Killian nodded seriously, a hint of determination in his eyes. "I know. I won't let my magic be my only strength. I'll improve in everything to meet the chief's expectations for the future." Killian seemed to regard him as some kind of deity, taking every decision he made as absolute. While Rigger didn't see this as inherently bad, he knew he wasn't infallible. One day, Killian would realize he was just another person with flaws and strengths. Rigger turned his gaze back to the training field, his eyes landing on Lysena, who was training in the distance. When their eyes met, she quickly looked away, as if caught in the act. Rigger felt a small smile forming on his lips, but refrained from commenting. He had already deduced it was a childhood crush, but he saw her as nothing more than an adorable kid. He turned to Killian, who had also noticed the silent exchange but said nothing. Rigger decided to share his future plans. "When Linnea and Persina leave for Renoa, you and Lysena should follow them. By then, the Iron Legion should be more stable, and you'll also need to gain experience. We can't afford to halt growth." Killian looked at Rigger with a thoughtful expression. "Understood. We'll follow your lead. The Iron Legion needs to be strong, but it also needs time to mature. When the time comes, we'll be ready to go." Rigger nodded. This would certainly not be a small project, but he was confident. With the hierarchy system in place, diversified training, and the integration of neighboring tribes, the Legion was on its way to becoming a formidable force. "Ask me about anything you're unsure of while I'm still here," Rigger said, refocusing on Killian. "My master told me I'll learn Saint-level water magic and King-level earth magic on the same day. That will also be my last day in the tribe,